All right, well, welcome back, everyone. It's our pleasure to have a bit of a salon-style Q&A here. So I've got a couple things just to get us rolling on discussion, but this is meant to be really open, and this is an Ask Steph Anything, shall we say. Divine. One of the passages for me that really stuck was this notion of finish lines. And it's actually comes pretty late in the book. You're talking about actually breaking the threshold, the 4 million goal, that big blue ribbon goal you set for yourself. And surprising, because it kind of came and went pretty quietly. And I know the book says, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, when did I stop to celebrate? So I wonder if you want to talk about that a little bit.
That's a good one. So I do believe we should celebrate finish lines, and really lines of any kind. But I find starting lines to be so much more not only alluring, but I also find starting lines to be the things that hold all of the energy and potential. And so I look more now in my life, this is probably one of the larger shifts that this trip created for me, was that I used to look for starting line, or I used to look for finish line. Like, what can I do? How many boxes can I tick off in like the next hour or week or month? And I think I've shifted so dramatically to really start looking at starting lines. And this takes me back to the whole talk about Joseph Campbell and that call to adventure. And if I am in a stage of boredom or discontent in my life, am I looking for the starting lines? A lot of people ask me about finish lines and what's next. Like, what's the next finish line and what is on your bucket list? And I have two things. Before this trip, I would have listed 1,000 things. I would have been like, well, there's the trip to Botswana, there's the degree at Royal Roads, there's I would have listed all of these different things. And they would have been relatively arbitrary. Maybe my ego would have been hooked in at some point to them. But there's two things that are on my bucket list today, and those two things are, am I listening for the call to adventure? And when I hear it, this is the second thing, when I hear it, do I have the courage to say yes? Because those are two separate things. So that's always how I feel about starting lines now. Let's celebrate when we complete something. Like, no basement renovation would get finished if we didn't celebrate finish lines. So let's celebrate that and make sure that happens. But I'd like to keep my focus more on what is calling me. Where do I feel is going to be purpose, curiosity? Where am I going to fulfill that? Where is my potential? What is the best and highest use of me in the world? Not in an egotistical way, but just like in a service, almost in a service way. And how can I move towards those? And I think it's the starting lines. So that's my jam on that.
Very cool. And I'm listening to that, I hear a real shift from, because goals are so much about logic and planning and your brain, and it sounds like you've made a real shift into your heart and following your intuition.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. The biggest shift for me, there's probably two major shifts for me on this ski trip. The biggest shift for me was moving from what I would call a fear-based form of motivation to what I would now call a love-based, compassion-based, intuition-based, curiosity-based form of motivation. And I think that was just a huge shift for me. I had a coach from Royal Roads actually tell me, she's known me for years. She said, I've seen you since you were like 3 or 4. Use fear as a form of motivation in your life. Man, it was good. Like, you did some stuff, like lots of stuff. But every time you go bigger with that, the fear's got to get bigger. And she said, Steph, by the time you're 40 or 50 or 60 or who knows, you're going to be paralyzed by it. And is that what you want? And I was like, no. So I had to figure that out. And what I've discovered, which has helped me shift it, is that there's a big belief in our society that has a motivation form that goes something like this. If I do something, I will have something. And when and only when I have something, then I will be something. So I'll give an example. I'll give a Kardashian example. If I do 1,000 squats, I will have a curvaceous behind, and when and only when I have a curvaceous behind will I be worthy, attractive, successful, whatever. You can do this in your career as well, or in a corporate setting. Maybe I shouldn't have done a career acting example. If I put in the 50 or 60 or 70 hours extra, then I will have the promotion. And when and only when I have the promotion and maybe the money or the title that comes with it, will I call myself successful or free, right? So it makes all of our desire of how we want to feel and our state of being contingent on things that are either arbitrary or very hooked into our ego or our fear-based motivation centers. So I like to switch that. I like to switch it to, and we learned this probably in coaching school together. You're like, yeah, this is familiar. So I like to switch it to be, do, have. So if I be something, if I really want to feel successful or feel confident, could I step into that a lot, or just even like a toenail, like a little bit? And if I can do that, then that is going to lead me to doing dramatically different things in my day, in my week, in my month, etc. And when I do those dramatically different things, what I have at the end of it all will be, that's where the impossible dreams. Like if you had said to me 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, you're going to be like touring across, North America, you will have written a book, this is a joke. Like, bring out the Panamanian rum. Like, it's a joke. So, it was a dream you couldn't even come up with. But when I was able to sit in purpose and confidence and joy, which were the feelings I wanted, then I could go into meetings with agents or publishers like open, instead of like some puffed up peacock ego center, And when I did that, it led to dramatically different things, if that makes sense.
Well, we could sit here and talk all day.
Bring the wine up here.
Yeah, just a table up. Would anyone like to ask a question of Steph? I see, hands all over the place.
I just honestly want you to kind of like repeat the last thing you said. It was like really a lot of information in the statement. So be, do, what?
So we're asking Steph to go over the be, do, have. Yeah, you bet.
So 180, so I need to like...
Right, it is, right? It is. So the question was, say what? Say that again? So the way it goes in society typically is do, have, be, right? You're like, I got that down, sister. The way that I like to think of it now is be, do, have, right? So if I stand in success, joy, if I stand in just simple happiness and gratitude, then am I going to go into Starbucks or we've noticed a chain of coffee shops in Canada, Good Earth? Is that a chain? Am I going to go into Good Earth and am I going to order a coffee and actually make eye contact and say hello? Because I'm standing in joy instead of like, on my phone. And if I make eye contact and order that coffee with joy and gratitude, who knows, maybe one day I'm going to get a free coffee, or you don't know. You don't know what it is you're going to have at the end of it. So that's the gist. Does that answer the, yeah? Great.
Yeah. Were you a writer prior to your adventure, or are you a writer because of your adventure? And can you kind of comment on your writing journey?
Yes, I can. So we're repeating questions because we're taping. So was I a writer prior? Was I a writer because of the adventure? I think I'd probably say yes and neither. I've always loved to write. When I was I was always encouraged by my high school teachers, like, join the creative writing group, and I was like, that's not cool. So I didn't. I always turned essays in university, regardless of the subject it was in, into creative writing projects. The teachers would like just pass me because they're like, well, it's pretty good writing, but it's not what we asked you to do. So I've always loved to write, and I've always loved to travel, and I often write a lot when I'm traveling. And so I did that when I was on the ski trip. I wrote a blog, and it's not like blogs are now, where it's like I've got 50,000 hits a day and I've got advertisers. It was like a newsletter for my mom and two friends, right? So I had the blog and did the ski trip, and then it was the call to adventure. I went to coaching school, I started my own business, but I kept hearing the knock on the basement door saying, you gotta write the book, you gotta write the book. Came in all different forms from all different people. And I said, no, I don't know how to do this. I was bawling my eyes out in Royal Roads, not knowing I was called, but couldn't figure it out. And then one day I just kind of threw up my hands in frustration of myself, really, and just said, okay, I surrender. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to figure out how to write a book. And so I wrote a really terrible first draft, which is what they should be, really, really awful. And then once I did that, it was almost like I was on, this is how the universe works, it was almost like I was on a wave. Like all I had to do was just keep riding it, and the rest, it was gonna be hard work, but there was gonna be ease to it. And that's what the experience was. So the answer is kind of like, yes, I was a writer, but no, I was, when I went out to meet publishers in New York, they were like, so where did you go to school? As in, where did you get your like hoity-toity MFA, a Master's in Fine Arts? And I was like, grade 11 English. Like, that's it. So certainly not a trained writer. But that was one of the most beautiful things about it, was the learning and the challenge of honing that initial kind of very, very rough skill that I had as a younger woman. Yeah. I have a blue scarf there, yeah.
Going into your trip, did you have any fears of traveling alone, or more specifically going skiing by yourself?
That's a great question. So I did not have fears of traveling alone because I had done it multiple times before. So this trip was certainly the biggest undertaking that I had done, but I had traveled through Africa on my own, I had traveled through Europe on my own. Smaller trips, like, okay, I'm gonna go for 3 weeks, I'm gonna go for 2 months. So this was outside of my comfort zone, but not so far out that it was like pure lunacy, right? And I think that's such an important distinction to make, is because I do these kind of events and people will come up to me afterwards and say, well, that's great that you could do that, but like I don't travel and I don't ski, or like I have children, or I have a job that I kind of like, so I guess that's not possible for me. And I always want to correct them, because really all it is just to get outside of your comfort zone, and that kind of transformation can occur. It could be moving from walking 5K to running 5K. It could be signing up for a pottery class because you felt the calling to engage in that kind of craft or art for a long time, but just have been refusing to listen to it. So it doesn't have to be this big thing. So I didn't have fears about traveling alone. Perhaps if you had asked me before my first trip to Europe as a, I don't even know, 20-year-old, are you a little scared about this? I would have been like, heck yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, you know? But it was 3 weeks, and then I was meeting somebody, and so it was, baby steps into that. The skiing on my own, no, again, because most of the skiing on this trip was resort-based skiing. So there's a huge difference between if you're going to ski on a resort where, there's like a team of patrol people and most of the people around the world speak English, or some of the staff on the mountain might speak English. So there's a big difference between that and big mountain skiing, backcountry skiing, which I did. Probably 5% of the trip was backcountry skiing. And when I did that skiing, yes, you're scared, and you should be. You're in what could be very dangerous situations. And in that case, your fear becomes your friend. It's adrenaline. When your fear comes up, you then ask it, what should I be scared of here? And it will say, that crest, that snow, that iffy pack over there, like all of these things. So you're really using it as a friend. So not scared to ski on the resorts, rightly scared to ski in the backcountry, and would never, the question was, what is skiing on your own? Would never have skied in the backcountry on my own. That's like a no-go for anybody in the room. Don't do it. So if there was fear that came up for me, I used it as a friend, and I wasn't on my own. Yeah.